The day I met Jenna seemed no different from any other. Uneventful, really, but the impression she made was impossible to shake. I had just started my first real job at a small, slightly disorganized publishing house, still getting used to the pace and the personalities. Jenna worked next door as an editor, already established and confident in a way that stood out. She walked into my office with a confident smile, introduced herself without hesitation, and carried herself like someone who expected people to take notice, and they usually did. There was a kind of magnetic pull to her, something in her voice, in the way she made eye contact just a second longer than most. I didn't even have time to question why I was drawn to her. It just happened. At the time, I had no clue that moment would end up changing everything. What started as casual hallway chats and shared office banter gradually grew into a deeper connection. We'd stay late brainstorming ideas or debating over character motivations like it was life or death. Jenna had this way of finding beauty in flawed stories. She'd insist there was something redeemable even in the messiest narrative, which felt poetic at the time. She challenged me, made me think differently. It was exciting. Eventually, those late nights turned into dinners, and before long, we were spending more time together outside of work than in it. When I proposed a year later, it didn't feel rushed or dramatic. It just felt right, like a natural continuation of what we had built. The proposal was quiet and simple, just the two of us at a park with a picnic and some wine. We laughed, made big promises, dreamed about a future that felt full of adventure and trust. Of course, I couldn't have predicted how different reality would turn out to be. In the early days, marriage felt easy. We bought a modest home with a creaky back porch and settled into a rhythm that worked. Evenings were spent cooking together, arguing over which books were overrated, or just relaxing with music and wine. On weekends, we'd hike local trails or spend time with friends. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours, and for a while, I genuinely believed we were solid. But slowly, things began to shift. At first, it was small. Jenna's playfulness during social events started to blur the line between charming and flirtatious. She'd lean in a little too close when talking to other men, laugh a little too loudly at jokes that weren't that funny. I told myself it was just her personality, outgoing, warm, maybe a little provocative. I didn't want to be the insecure husband. So I said nothing. Still, a nagging feeling lingered. And in hindsight, I think I chose not to listen to it. The real turning point came when Jenna got hired at Brockton Publishing. She threw herself into the new role with intensity. Her coworkers seemed enchanted by her, constantly praising her wit, her energy, her vision. I tried to be happy for her. But the changes were obvious. She was staying later, mentioning new colleagues I'd never meet. Her phone, once carelessly left on the coffee table, was now always in her pocket, screen turned down. Even when we were in the same room, it felt like she was somewhere else. I told myself it was just work stress. A phase. Something temporary. But that illusion cracked the night Tyler asked to meet me for a drink. He was already at the bar when I arrived, and from the second I saw him, I knew something was off. His smile was tight, almost rehearsed. He greeted me with forced enthusiasm, the kind that usually means someone's hiding something. Still, I played along, not wanting to jump to conclusions. He ordered a pitcher of beer and led us to a quiet booth in the back. We started with meaningless small talk, grumbling about the Reds' chances, joking about how third place would be a miracle. Then came the obligatory local gossip. A recent scandal involving the mayor's chief of staff and a church treasurer tangled up in a prostitution ring had everyone buzzing. Tyler laughed, made a crude joke about the creativity involved, and I chuckled along, though I barely heard him. Something in his energy just wasn't right. Eventually, the conversation drifted to Brockton Publishing, where Tyler worked with Jenna. He mentioned petty office squabbles, some minor promotions. But he kept fidgeting, rubbing his palms together, avoiding eye contact. His answers became shorter, distracted. It was obvious something was weighing on him. I finally cut in. "All right, Tyler. What's this really about? Why'd you want to meet?" He froze. Then, after a beat, said quietly, "Jenna told me something. Something I wasn't supposed to repeat. That got my attention." "Told you what?" He shifted uncomfortably. "She said, you two have this thing. A game. That you're okay with her being with other guys. That secrecy is part of it." I stared at him, completely thrown. "She made it sound like you were both into it," he added quickly. "Like it was this shared kink. She made me promise not to tell, but I couldn't just assume. I needed to hear it from you." I managed to keep my voice steady. "So, you slept with her?" Tyler nodded, eyes full of shame. "Yeah, twice. Once when you were in Louisville. And again this past Tuesday." We were both off. I felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. And she told you I was okay with it? I asked, trying to keep the fury out of my voice. She was really convincing, he said, swallowing hard. Told me it had been going on for years. That the secrecy made it hotter. I wouldn't have done anything if I thought it was real cheating. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep from exploding. Tyler. I had no idea. I thought I was married to someone who respected me. He looked crushed. Ethan, I swear, if I'd known, I never would have gone near her. I nodded, then said, okay. Do two things for me. Anything. First, don't ever sleep with her again. Never, he said immediately. Second, don't tell her we talked. If she tries to meet up, make an excuse. I need space to figure this out. Tyler nodded. I'm sorry, man. I really thought you knew. He left soon after, and I stayed in that booth for a long time. I couldn't move. I just sat there, trying to make sense of what I just heard, the pieces of my life now scattered across the table. Later that night, I called home. Jenna didn't answer. I left Jenna a message, told her I'd be late and that she should eat without me. I needed space. Space to think. Space to breathe. I wandered into a quiet diner, sat in a booth, ordered a burger and salad, then barely touched either. My appetite was gone. My mind wouldn't stop racing. For 14 years, I believed I was married to someone honest, loving, and faithful. But now, all of it, our home, our memories, the quiet routines felt false. Like I built my life on top of a hidden fault line. I didn't know how to face her. What could I say? When we first met, I'd been drawn in by her boldness. Jenna wasn't traditionally beautiful, but she had this energy, confident, flirtatious, impossible to ignore. Over the years, I'd seen her charm others easily, especially men, but I brushed it off as harmless. I trusted her. Completely. I never thought I'd have to question that. Our sex life had been fine. Nothing wild, but intimate. Comfortable. I thought it was enough. Clearly, I was wrong. By the time I left the diner, I still couldn't bring myself to confront her. Everything felt surreal, like I was trapped in a story I didn't write. I needed more answers. So I reached out to Tyler. At home, I pretended nothing was wrong. Jenna greeted me warmly, cheerful as ever. We talked about our days like usual. Later, in bed, I was relieved when she didn't try to initiate anything. I couldn't have handled it. Once she was asleep, I shifted away from her, quietly. I couldn't stand to be that close. That night, sleep escaped me. My dreams were disturbing, images of Jenna in bed with faceless men, laughing. I woke up feeling like I was grieving something I hadn't even lost yet. The next morning, after Jenna left for work, I called Tyler again. He was hesitant, but agreed to meet for lunch. At the table, Tyler looked tense. He picked at his food, barely eating, clearly dreading the conversation. Then he began to explain. Jenna had invited him for drinks a few weeks ago. She flirted, ramped things up, then casually introduced the idea, a game, that she claimed I was into. One where she slept with other men and told me about it later. At first, Tyler thought she was joking. But she didn't back down. She made it sound like this had been going on for years. Eventually, she invited him to a motel while I was out of town. He admitted he was hesitant, but her confidence, her details, the way she made it sound consensual, it broke him down. He agreed. Then came the worst part. She even suggested your house, Tyler said, his voice low. But I couldn't do that. It didn't feel right. I felt sick. Go on, I told him. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. I won't get graphic, Ethan. But she was intense. It was clear she enjoyed it. She said the best part was telling you everything afterward. That it turned her on. I said nothing. Just stared, trying not to react. How long has this been going on? I asked. A few years, maybe more, Tyler said. She mentioned other guys before me. Called them buddies. She even said you preferred it when she switched partners, that you got bored if it was the same person. I clenched my jaw. Did she say who came before you? I asked. She named a few, Tyler replied. Most didn't sound familiar. Except one, Victor Hale. The name hit me like a punch. The city councilman? Tyler nodded. Yeah. She said they met at some Brockton publishing event. Claimed she tried to avoid people who might know you. Guess I slipped through. I leaned in. Why you, Tyler? Why'd she pick you? He hesitated, eyes on the table. She said I was irresistible. Ethan. I feel like dirt. You must hate me. I let out a slow breath. No. I don't blame you. She fed you a convincing lie. The real betrayal is hers. She's been lying to me for years and enjoying it. Tyler looked genuinely ashamed. I could see the regret in his eyes. Still, I needed more. I needed to be sure. That night, I reached out to my closest friend, Marcus, and asked if he'd meet me for dinner. I left Jenna another vague message, told her not to wait up. Over drinks and dinner, I told Marcus everything. Tyler, the motel, the supposed game, all of it. He listened without interrupting much. Just the occasional question for clarity. When I finally broke down mid-story, he passed me a napkin and let the silence do the comforting. When I finished, he asked, "So what now?" I paused. First, I need to verify Tyler's story. I still can't believe it's real. And second, if it is, I'm done. There's no going back. Marcus nodded. What can I do? Keep this to yourself, not even Sophie, I said. You've got my word, he said without hesitation. There's one name Tyler gave me. Victor Hale. I need to reach him, but he doesn't know me. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And you think he'll talk to me? You're a respected political journalist. He knows who you are. He'll trust you more than some stranger asking personal questions about his sex life. Marcus thought it over, then nodded. All right, let's figure this out. We spent the next half hour discussing how to approach Hale. Before we wrapped up, he gave me one last piece of advice. Stay calm around Jenna. Don't tip her off until you're sure. I'll try, I said, though I wasn't sure I could keep up the act. That night, I forced myself to be normal. Jenna greeted me like nothing was wrong, cheerful, relaxed. She had no idea. We talked. We laughed. It felt fake, like I was acting in someone else's life. Later in bed, she curled close to me. I stayed still. Thankfully, she didn't try anything. When she finally drifted off, I carefully moved to the edge of the bed. That little bit of space between us felt like the only truth I had left. 2 days later, Marcus and I sat across from Victor Hale in his office. It was just after 10 in the morning. His space was modern, elegant, polished like the man himself. He greeted Marcus warmly, chatting casually for a few minutes before finally asking, "So, what brings you here?" Marcus didn't waste time. "This is personal, Victor. Off the record. Do you know Jenna Grayson, my friend Ethan's wife?" Hale's expression barely shifted, but there was a flicker. A pause that told me everything. "I believe I've met her," he said carefully. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Mr. Hale, I'm not here to cause problems, but I know you were involved with my wife. I just need the truth." Hale's eyes narrowed as he glanced between Marcus and me. "This is off the record?" he asked. "Completely," Marcus assured him. "It doesn't leave this room." After a brief pause, Hale exhaled, his tone resigned. "Yes, I had an affair with Jenna about 2 years ago. We met at a publishing event. She told me it was part of some arrangement between you two, that you liked hearing about her with other men." He glanced at me, almost sheepishly. She was clear. "I wasn't supposed to mention it to you. Ever. How long did it last?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "About 3 months," he said. "From late spring through the end of summer. She said you preferred when she rotated partners, claimed it kept things exciting for you." "And where did you meet?" I asked, bracing myself. He let out another sigh. "Different places. Sometimes hotels, occasionally empty apartments I had access to through work. Once or twice, she even suggested your house when you were away." I clenched my jaw to keep my composure. "Did she ever mention other men?" I continued. "Or how long she'd been doing this?" "She said I was the 4th or 5th, he replied, his voice weary. "Though she claimed I was the best. I imagine she told everyone that." "Mr. Grayson. I'm sorry. I thought it was mutual. I wouldn't have touched her otherwise." I gave a stiff nod. "I don't hold it against you. She lied to you, same as she did to me. That's on her." He looked relieved. "You'll keep this private?" "Absolutely," Marcus answered before I could. Outside, Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I exhaled slowly. I knew what I was going to hear, but hearing it out loud, it's different. It seals it. "You want to talk? Grab lunch? Hit the driving range?" "Thanks, but no. I need to walk and clear my head," I said. Then added, "Could you and Sophie come over for dinner tomorrow? I'll need help planning what's next." "Of course," Marcus said. "I'll talk to her." As I walked to my car, I felt an unexpected wave of gratitude for Marcus's support. At the same time, the reality of my collapsing marriage sat heavily in my chest. Later that evening, pulling into the driveway, a thought struck me. Why keep pretending? I wasn't ready to confront Jenna, not fully, but the idea of shaking her up, throwing her just slightly off balance, had a certain appeal. In the kitchen, she greeted me with her usual cheerfulness, setting plates on the table and leaning in for a kiss. I returned her smile, grabbed a bottle of wine, and took my seat. She chattered on about her day while I nodded politely, offering little in return. Eventually, my silence caught her attention. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she said, tilting her head. "Bad day?" "Yeah," I replied flatly. "Just realizing you can't always trust the people you think you can." Her smile faltered. "Something happened at work?" "I'd rather not get into it," I said curtly, watching as a flicker of unease crossed her face. After dinner, I cut us slices of pie. We ate mostly in silence. She made a few attempts to revive the conversation with neighborhood gossip and her coworkers' vacation plans, but I didn't bite. When dessert was done, she leaned in, brushing her cheek against mine. "Coffee? Or something hotter?" she whispered, voice soft, suggestive. Normally, that kind of flirtation would have worked. Tonight, it only ignited my anger. I stood abruptly. "No. I've got paperwork to finish," I said coldly, walking off to my office and shutting the door behind me. I stayed there until I was sure she was asleep. By 10 p.m., I found myself asking why I was even avoiding her. I changed into pajamas and quietly got into bed. Jenna, in a silky, low-cut nightgown, turned off the TV and slid in beside me. "Feeling up for some love, Ethan?" she whispered. I turned away from her. "Not tonight," I said flatly, reaching to switch off the lamp. She didn't press. Didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't dig into the sudden chill between us. She just lay there, silent, but I could feel her tension. She knew something was off, and she was afraid to find out what. Meanwhile, I lay in the dark, staring into nothing, remembering everything, our wedding, our years together, the version of her I thought I knew. I barely slept. The next morning, I left before sunrise, without saying a word to her. By 7:30 a.m., I was at my desk, already outlining the steps I needed to take. Financials, accounts, movers. I left a note for David, my boss, requesting a private meeting. At 8:15, David knocked. "You wanted to see me?" "Yeah," I said, closing the door behind him. "This is personal, David. I need to keep it confidential." He nodded, concerned. "Of course. I just found out Jenna's been unfaithful. I'm leaving her." David's eyes widened. "Jesus, Ethan. I'm so sorry. I appreciate it. But I need your help. Do you remember that headhunter who reached out to me last year? I'd like to reconnect." He paused, then nodded. "I'll get you their info." By mid-morning, I was on the phone with the recruiter. By noon, I'd submitted an updated resume, and by 3 p.m., we were already talking through 3 open positions. The most promising role was a fundraising director position at a major nonprofit in Chicago. It offered a 20% pay increase, a stronger support team, and an immediate start. Apparently, the position had been vacant for months, and they were eager to move quickly. I expressed interest and told them I was ready to interview as soon as possible. At 5:50, just as I was packing up for the day, my phone buzzed. "Mr. Grayson, this is Owen Callahan from Global Resources in Chicago. I understand you're interested in the fundraising director role." We spoke for nearly 30 minutes, discussing the role, expectations, and the organization's mission. By the end of the call, Owen had scheduled me for an in-person interview with the board 2 days from now. I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. It was small, but it was real. That evening, I met with Marcus and Sophie for dinner. Sharing everything with Sophie, the betrayal, the twisted lies, the scope of it all, was painful but also liberating. She listened quietly at first, then shook her head in disbelief. "What a horrible woman," she said, her voice tight. "I can't believe she did this to you." Then she softened. "We've got your back, Ethan." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," Sophie said, her voice warm and full of sympathy. "What can we do to help?" I wiped at the corners of my eyes and offered a shaky smile. "Just be my friends. That's all I need right now. I'll make it through, but knowing I'm not alone means everything." Over dinner, I laid out my plan. I wasn't looking for revenge or public humiliation. I just wanted a clean break, something quiet but powerful. If the Chicago job came through, I'd disappear without warning. No confrontation. No closure. Just gone. Let her wake up one day and realize she'd lost everything. That, I figured, would be punishment enough. I walked them through the logistics. How I'd delay any announcement about the new job. Change my number, my email. David had already offered to help me keep things off Jenna's radar. When she eventually started reaching out, and I asked Marcus and Sophie to play dumb. Just say you don't know anything, I said. Sophie nodded quickly. You can count on us. And when she does call, I'll be thrilled to tell her exactly what I think of her. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're sure you'll stay loyal to me? Sophie rolled her eyes and smacked his arm. Obviously. And don't even think about pulling something like this unless you want to lose all your dignity. We all laughed, genuinely, and for the first time in days, I felt some of the pressure ease. Just for a little while, I forgot what I was carrying. That night, I returned home to a dark bedroom. Jenna was awake but quiet. Earlier, she'd sent a few light-hearted emails. I'd responded with nothing more than a line about dinner plans. Hey, love, she said softly as I walked in, her voice sweet and familiar. It made something twist inside me. I wanted to believe, even for a moment, that she was still the woman I married. How was dinner? I missed you. It was fine, I replied, distant. I had dinner with Marcus and Sophie. It's nice to have people you can actually count on. Her shoulders tensed at that. She didn't push for more. Maybe she sensed she didn't want the answer. I got ready for bed in silence. When I slid in beside her, she wrapped her arms around me and murmured, You let me down last night. Her tone was teasing. Think you can make it up to me? I gave a dry, humorless laugh. Sorry, Jenna. Not tonight. Still got a lot on my mind. She paused, unsettled. All right, honey. I understand, she said softly. But I miss you. I hope we can be close again soon. She gently stroked my arm before turning away. Her breathing stayed uneven for a long while. She couldn't sleep, and I knew why. As for me, I lay awake, mind racing through every step of my plan. Over the next few days, everything moved fast. The interview in Chicago with the Global Resources Council went better than I could have imagined. They offered me the position almost immediately. I accepted without hesitation. Back at work, I broke the news to David. Told him the full story, at least the parts that mattered. He was shocked, but supportive. We agreed I'd stay on remotely for a month to help transition my projects. With David, Marcus, and Sophie in my corner, I felt ready to move forward. Leaving Jenna behind wasn't just necessary, it was the only way I'd ever breathe freely again. A few days later, I flew to Chicago to finalize the move. Owen Callahan, the recruiter, connected me with a real estate agent who quickly found a sleek, two-bedroom apartment near the office. It had modern finishes, big windows, and clean lines, a blank canvas. I signed the lease on the spot. I spent the next day picking out furniture, choosing every piece with care. I wanted the space to feel intentional, nothing borrowed from my old life. The building manager agreed to oversee deliveries, and my soon-to-be assistant, Naomi Ellis, offered to help stock the place with essentials like towels, dishes, and bedding. I promised her dinner at one of Chicago's best restaurants in return. By the time I returned to Cincinnati, most of the move was lined up. All that remained was to clear out my university office, pack my personal things, and begin detangling our finances. I tackled it all methodically, wrapping up most of it by Friday. Jenna didn't ask many questions. She was used to my work trips. But what she couldn't ignore was the growing coldness in our home. She tried harder, making little gestures, offering affection, but I stayed distant. She'd smile wider, talk more, try to pull me back in. But her eyes betrayed her. There was fear in them now. She didn't know what I knew. But she knew something was wrong, and she was too scared to ask. Her silence gave me a bitter kind of satisfaction. Then one afternoon, Sophie called while I was at work. Her voice was practically buzzing with amusement. Guess who just called me, she said. I smirked. Let me guess, my darling wife. Sophie laughed. Bingo. She's fishing for answers. Wanted to know if I had any idea why you've been acting so distant. What did you tell her? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Oh, I let her squirm a little. She said you've been cold, barely speaking to her, avoiding her, shutting her out. So I asked if there was anything she might have done to upset you. And she swore up and down that there wasn't, Sophie said. So I said, well, why don't you ask him directly? And you know what she said? I already knew. She said she was afraid to. That hit harder than I expected. Jenna, the woman who once challenged everyone, who never hesitated to speak her mind, was afraid. Not just of me, but of the truth. She knew the walls were closing in. And still, she said nothing. I laughed softly. She's terrified. Exactly, Sophie replied. She's putting on that innocent act while probably panicking underneath. But don't worry, I didn't give her anything. Thanks, I said. Let me know if she tries anything else. Of course, she said. You just tell me when you're ready to drop the hammer. Monday. I said with finality. That's when it all happens. Over the weekend, I made no effort to pretend. I didn't sugarcoat my mood or try to soften the coldness between us. On Saturday, Jenna gently suggested we take a walk in the park. Her voice was unusually sweet, almost careful. I stared at her blankly before replying. I'm not interested. Later, she brought up dinner and a movie, maybe a night out. I shut her down without a second thought. I'd rather stay home and relax. That evening, we sat on the couch watching TV in silence. Just before the episode ended, I stood abruptly. I've got some reports to finish, I said, disappearing into my office and closing the door. I stayed there until well after midnight, long after she'd gone to bed. The next morning, I woke to her pressed against me, her breath warm on my neck, hand gliding over my chest. Good morning, baby, she whispered, her voice laced with sugar. I think we should make up for lost time. I opened my eyes to her playful smile, the same one she likely wore for Tyler, Victor, and whoever else she'd invited into our bed. It turned my stomach. Gently but firmly, I placed my hands on her shoulders and pushed her back. Jenna, don't, I said sharply. I don't pressure you when you're not interested, and I expect the same respect. Her expression shifted immediately, from flirty to wounded. But it's been weeks, she whispered. Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? It was the closest she'd come to acknowledging the tension between us. I could feel her desperation trying to claw its way through. Why don't you tell me? I asked coldly. She looked down, avoiding my eyes. No, she said softly. Nothing. Then I guess we're done here, I muttered, getting up and heading to the kitchen to make coffee. The rest of the day passed in a thick, uneasy silence. Jenna kept her distance, hiding away in the bedroom or slipping out to run errands. I overheard hushed phone calls, likely to friends, maybe to someone she trusted, someone she assumed I knew nothing about. While she was out, I called Tyler. Has Jenna been in touch with you? I asked. She has, he admitted. She asked about you, said you've been acting distant, but claimed not to know why. I played dumb. Good, I said. Anything else? She mentioned wanting to pick up where we left off. Said she'd wait until things with you calmed down. I closed my eyes briefly, disgusted. Keep playing along. It'll all come to light soon. Just don't let her know we talked. You've got it, Tyler replied. She has no idea. I hung up. Everything was in place. Monday was coming. That morning, I ate breakfast alone. Jenna wandered into the bedroom, halfway through her routine, and paused when she saw me dressed in sweatpants and sneakers, not my usual work attire. Aren't you heading into the office? She asked, clearly puzzled. No, I replied flatly. I took the day off. Got some things to handle. She hesitated for only a moment before softening her voice. Well, since you're not in a hurry, maybe we could spend a little time together? She gave a coy smile. I wouldn't mind being late for work. I forced myself to imagine her with Victor Hale or with Tyler. Her affection, her softness, now felt rehearsed, weaponized. She had given it so freely to other men, while I'd stayed loyal. Steady. Stupid. No, I said coldly. Before she could react, I walked downstairs, heading straight to the basement. I waited until I heard her car leave the driveway before I returned upstairs. Then I moved quickly. I packed everything I planned to take. 3 suitcases, a few boxes of personal items and books. I called a taxi and rode to the post office, where I shipped the boxes to my new Chicago apartment. Then I went straight to the airport. By 7:30 p.m., I was in my new apartment, unpacking and trying to make the space feel like mine. Later, I walked to a nearby pizza joint, ordered a pie and a beer, and raised a toast to myself. To the first day of the rest of my life. A life without Jenna. Before leaving that morning, I'd left a short note on the kitchen table. Just a few words. No long explanations. No apologies. No chance for her to twist anything. Just the truth. I know all about your little game. Here's mine. Farewell to the cheating wife. Underneath it, I placed my wedding ring and phone. The first week at the Global Resources Council was demanding, and I was thankful for that. The whirlwind of onboarding, meetings, and planning distracted me from the storm I just walked out of. I didn't miss Jenna because I wanted her back. I missed her because love and betrayal don't cancel each other out like a math equation. 14 years of loyalty and affection don't vanish overnight. The memories still haunted me, our wedding, our travels, lazy Sunday mornings. Now tainted, but not gone. My feelings had become a twisted knot of nostalgia, grief, and white-hot anger. But the job kept me grounded. Moving forward. By Friday night, I was grateful for some stillness. I crashed on the couch with a ball game on, sipping a beer and letting the sound fill the quiet. But as the weekend approached, so did something else, the reality of my new life. I was alone, in a new city. No one expecting me, no routines to return to, no familiar faces outside of work. I wasn't just single in status. I was single in the truest sense, untethered. And for the first time since walking out that door, it really hit me. The thought of rebuilding my life from the ground up, making new friends, finding another relationship, felt daunting. Exhausting, even. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be. Sunday brought a welcome break in the form of a call from Marcus and Sophie. They just wanted to check in, offer support, remind me I wasn't alone. I gave them my new number and address, reminding them again to keep everything quiet. Sophie, always eager to spill the latest, had news. She called me Monday night, Sophie said, clearly savoring the memory. Hysterical. Like, full-blown meltdown. I could barely understand her between sobs, but eventually she choked out the words. He's gone. He's just gone. I let out a bitter laugh. And what did you do? Oh, I played along, Sophie said with glee. Told her I'd come over right away. She paused for dramatic effect. Ethan, she looked like a train wreck. Crying nonstop, mascara everywhere, hair sticking out like she just rolled out of bed. I poured her a glass of wine and sat down like a concerned friend. I chuckled. You're a better actress than I gave you credit for. She told me everything, Sophie said, proud of the performance. Said she came home to find your wedding ring and that note on the table. I acted shocked, like, wait, what? Why would Ethan do that? Did you leave him a note or something? And that's when she broke. She told you. Every last detail, Sophie said. She finally admitted it. I cheated on him. I stood up, stormed around the kitchen, and laid into her. Told her I couldn't believe she'd do that to you. Said you were the best husband anyone could ask for. Then I walked out and left her sobbing into her wine. Sophie, I said with a smile, you deserve an Oscar. She's desperate to find you, Sophie added, her voice serious again. And honestly, I hope it's driving her insane. It did infuriate me. Not her panic, she earned that. What enraged me was how much I still missed her. Even after everything, there were moments I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text her or thinking of something funny she would have laughed at. And then I'd remember what she'd done, and it would twist in my gut all over again. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus and Sophie were my lifeline. I called them often, sometimes to vent about work, sometimes about the quiet, gnawing loneliness that came with starting over. The anger I felt toward Jenna didn't fade. It simmered, stubborn and sharp, just beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Jenna was on the hunt. Sophie told me she was calling nearly every day, checking in with anyone who might have a hint about where I'd gone. David told me she'd even shown up at my old office, genuinely stunned to find out I had quit and left no forwarding address. 3 weeks into my new life, Marcus and Sophie invited me back to Cincinnati for the weekend. I needed the break. Some grounding. Familiar faces. A reminder that I wasn't completely untethered. Over dinner, Sophie gave me an update. She came to see me on Thursday, she said. I sparkling. Still in panic mode. Now she's talking about hiring a private investigator. I nearly choked on my drink. You're kidding. Nope. She's convinced that if she can just find you and explain, you'll forgive her. As if, I muttered. Oh, and of course she gave me her side of the story, Sophie continued, her grin widening. I pushed her. Said, you've been crying for weeks. When are you going to tell me the truth? And finally, she broke. I leaned in, bracing myself. Let's hear it. That evening, I learned more about Jenna than I ever wanted to know, things I could never unhear and would never be able to forget. Sophie spoke with a mix of outrage and grim satisfaction, like she'd been holding back this story for the perfect moment. She told me her first affair started with some British guy at a literary event. Sophie began. Said he was charming, witty, had that accent that made everything sound clever. They talked all night. He eventually asked her to grab drinks after the event. She said no, at first, mentioned she was married. But then, instead of walking away, she gave him her number and told him to meet her at the hotel bar in an hour. I stared at the floor, jaw tight. I'd always known there was a first time. I'd suspected. But hearing the details, how easily she crossed the line, it gutted me. They met at the bar, had a few drinks, then went upstairs. She admitted they slept together that night. Sophie's tone shifted, now sharp, angry. When I asked her why she'd do that, do you know what she said? I didn't answer. Just braced myself. She said, I was bored. She actually said that. I know it's no excuse, but it's the truth. Ethan and I had a great life, but it felt so predictable. Then this charming guy came along, and I thought, why not? My fists clenched. Bored, I repeated, the word sour on my tongue. She said the sex wasn't even amazing, just new. That it made things better between you two afterward. Like cheating on you somehow reinvigorated the marriage. She convinced herself it was harmless. Like she'd done you a favor. I exhaled sharply, trying to keep the fury in check. Unbelievable. It gets worse, Sophie said grimly. She said after that, it snowballed. First it was a few one-night stands, once or twice a year. Then she met a guy she really liked. That turned into a 3-month affair. It ended only because he got engaged to someone else. I felt sick. After that, she said she realized she liked the longer affairs. She called it a sweet spot 6, 10, maybe 20 encounters. Enough to feel exciting, not boring. That's how she described it. Not cheating. Not lying. Just exciting. And the whole game she made up? I asked, my voice cold. Sophie's lips curled in disgust. Started when one of her lovers got possessive and threatened to tell you. She panicked and came up with the lie, told him you were into it. That you liked hearing about her with other men. It was her way to defuse the threat. She was proud of it, Ethan. Said it was genius. Her insurance policy against being exposed. I didn't speak for a long moment. I just sat there, jaw clenched, pulse hammering in my ears. There it was. The truth. Or enough of it to burn away any lingering doubt. She had betrayed me, not just once, not even just physically, but at every level. She had mocked my trust. She had rewritten our marriage to suit her story. She actually laughed, Sophie said, her voice still edged with disbelief. Told me how clever she thought she was. Marcus slid another beer in front of me. I took a slow sip, hoping the cold bite would dull the heat burning through my chest. None of it shocked me anymore, not really. But hearing the full extent of it, spoken so plainly, stripped away any remaining illusions. What remained was hollow. How did I not see it? I asked aloud, more to myself than anyone. How could I trust someone who spent years casually dismantling everything we built? She was bored, I added bitterly, the words like acid. Everyone gets bored in marriage. You talk to your partner. You take a trip, try something new in bed, spice up the relationship, not yourself. My voice trembled. She never gave me a chance to fix things. She didn't want a solution, just a thrill. As I packed for my flight back to Chicago that Sunday, Marcus asked the question I'd been avoiding. So, what's next for Jenna? Letting her stew? Or are you planning something bigger? I paused, then shrugged. Maybe both. I'll let her wonder. And when she finally tracks me down, she'll get a surprise she won't forget. Marcus chuckled. I'd pay to see that. To my surprise, weeks passed before Jenna found me. Marcus later told me she'd hired someone, probably a private investigator. I wasn't surprised. Only disappointed it didn't take longer. One Thursday evening, I came home to a voicemail. Her voice was thick with sobs. Ethan, I finally found you. Thank God. I'm so sorry. Please, baby. I love you. I need to explain. I'll do anything to make this right. Please call me back. You're the only man I've ever loved. It dragged on for 5 exhausting minutes. Sobs, please, promises. Not one word surprised me. Not one word mattered. She wanted forgiveness because she finally felt guilt. As if that changed anything. I deleted the message and poured myself a drink. The next day, I invited Naomi, my assistant, to lunch. Over the last few weeks, she'd become more than a coworker, sharp, loyal, sarcastic in all the best ways. She already knew the basics of why I'd left my marriage and how I'd landed at Global Resources. When I laid out my plan for Jenna, she leaned back in her chair, eyes gleaming. Oh, Ethan, she said, practically cackling. This is genius. That woman deserves every ounce of it. Thanks, I said, surprised at how good it felt to be validated. But I need help finding the right person. Naomi grinned. Say no more. I've got a couple of people in mind. Give me a couple of days. I raised a skeptical eyebrow. You're serious? Dead serious, she replied with a wink. It's not technically in my job description, but for you, I'll make an exception. Her confidence was infectious. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to excitement. My plan was falling into place. Meanwhile, Jenna kept calling like clockwork. The messages were shorter now, but no less desperate. Her voice trembled, always asking for one more chance. They never once made me reconsider. By Monday evening, Naomi stepped into my office, a sly smile on her face. It's handled, she said. I found someone. She's perfect. Just tell me when and where. I tilted my head. Perfect, huh? Who is she? And how exactly did you sell her on this? Naomi shrugged. It's unconventional. But she's excited. I told her your story, and she was in. Practically volunteered. And you're not going to tell me who it is? Nope, she said cheerfully. But trust me, you're going to love this. Oh, and you owe me a call afterward. I want all the details. That night, I called Jenna and left a voicemail. It's me. If you're serious about explaining yourself, here's your chance. Be at my apartment in Chicago this Saturday at 1 p.m. Not before, not after. 1 hour. Here's the address. Leave a message to confirm. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. I let it go to voicemail. Ethan, she breathed, nearly sobbing with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be there. I promise. I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Her message went on, a remix of everything she'd already said. It only solidified my decision. On Wednesday, I stopped by Naomi's desk. Saturday at 1, I said. Can your mystery person be there by noon? Absolutely, she said with a smirk. Then, with a mischievous gleam in her eye, just don't forget to call me after. I want every juicy detail. Consider it my fee. That evening, Sophie called to check in. Ethan, she said, exasperated, I just can't believe her. Jenna genuinely thinks if she cries hard enough, you'll just take her back. She doesn't understand the depth of what she's done, I agreed. She never has. People like us, we value loyalty. We assume others operate the same way. But Jenna, I sighed. She never did. I just didn't want to see it. Saturday morning, I woke early and cleaned my apartment from top to bottom. I wanted the space to reflect who I was now, controlled, composed, done with playing the fool. Books were arranged with care, the table set neatly with a fresh bouquet in the center. Surfaces gleamed. The place looked like a life that didn't miss anyone. At 12:05, the doorbell rang. I opened it and froze. Standing there was Isabelle Reed. She worked with me at Global Resources. Isabelle Reed, effortlessly elegant, razor-sharp, and as stunning as ever. Petite, with piercing green eyes and jet black hair, she radiated grace in a way that turned heads without even trying. I hadn't expected her. Hello, Ethan, she said with a warm, amused smile. Surprise. I blinked, stunned for a beat. Isabelle had always been one of the most captivating people I'd ever met, and while I'd admired her from afar, I never imagined she'd be part of this plan. Isabelle. Naomi told you about today. She stepped inside, lifting a small shopping bag in one hand. She did. And I'm all in. Don't worry, I know exactly what I'm doing. Still trying to process her presence, I asked. Are you sure about this? It's not a small thing. Isabelle stepped closer, brushing her fingers lightly against my arm. Ethan, I understand more than you think. Naomi told me about your wife and everything she put you through. Let's just say, I've been there. My ex-fiancé cheated on me too. And if I could have served him something like this, I would have. Helping you, this feels right. I softened, my skepticism fading in the face of her sincerity. I'm sorry you went through that. She gave a half shrug, her smile edged with sadness. It's in the past. But trust me, this is going to be worth it. So, how do you want to play it? We decided to sit down for lunch first. Sandwiches at the kitchen table turned into easy conversation. Isabelle wasn't just beautiful, she was smart, witty, and completely unpretentious. Her laugh came easily, and to my surprise, I laughed too. Genuinely. For the first time in what felt like years, I smiled without effort. The heaviness I'd been carrying for so long lifted, even if just for a moment. I caught myself wondering, in another life, would I have had the courage to ask her out? But this wasn't the time for that. At 12:45, I glanced at the clock and exhaled slowly. It's almost time, I said. If you're still sure, you should probably head to the bedroom. She stood gracefully, her confidence unwavering. I've got this. Before she turned to go, she leaned in and brushed a kiss on my cheek. This is going to sting, Ethan, she said gently. She's been a part of your life for a long time. No matter how angry you are, don't expect it to feel easy. But I've got your back. I nodded, stunned by her poise. Thank you. She disappeared into the bedroom, leaving the door cracked open. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the quiet resolve that now filled the room. For the first time in a long while, I felt something that almost resembled triumph. At exactly 12:58, the doorbell rang. My pulse quickened as I walked to the door, steadying myself. When I opened it, Jenna stood there, nervous but trying hard to look composed. She wore a dress I'd once loved, her hair and makeup done just the way I used to compliment. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, her voice tentative. She looked like she wanted to hug me. I stepped back, offering no invitation. "Come in." She hesitated, then stepped inside. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked, already heading toward the kitchen. I poured 2 sodas and took a slow breath before returning to the table. My hands were steady, my face calm. I sat across from her, radiating the kind of cool detachment that unnerved her immediately. She reached for my hands. I didn't move. "All right, Jenna," I said evenly. "You said you wanted to explain yourself. I'm giving you 1 hour. But let's be clear, I don't think you deserve it." Her face fell. She swallowed hard, then spoke. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I was selfish, blind, and Stop." I cut her off sharply. "Don't insult me with cliches. I'm not here for apologies or declarations of love. We're going to deal with the facts." Her mouth trembled. "You cheated on me, Jenna. Not once. Not twice. For years. With countless men. Is that right?" She looked down. "Yes," she whispered. "Do you remember our vows?" I asked, voice low and icy. "Do you remember swearing to forsake all others?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "And when exactly did that vow stop meaning anything to you? When did I stop mattering?" Her eyes brimmed with tears, but I pressed on. "How many men, Jenna? How many affairs?" She closed her eyes. "I don't know. 10? 20? 50? I asked, leaning in. "Give me a number." "Maybe 20, she whispered. I sat back and let the silence stretch. "And how many times?" I asked. "How many times did you sleep with them?" Her voice cracked. "I don't know. Think," I snapped. "Do the math." She hesitated, then whispered, "Maybe 200 times." The number hit like a punch, but I didn't flinch. 200, I repeated, my voice hollow. "And how many of those were in our home? In our bed?" She looked like she might be sick. "Maybe 30. I clenched my fists under the table, pressing them into my thighs to keep myself from shaking. After a long pause, I said, "So tell me, why should I waste even one more second in the same room with you?" Tears spilled freely now. "Because I love you, Ethan." "No," I said quietly, shaking my head. "You love the idea of me. The version of me who'd forgive anything, overlook everything, who'd keep being steady while you lost your damn mind. You never loved me. If you did, you wouldn't have treated me like I was disposable." She sobbed harder now, trembling. "You broke me," I said. "And the worst part? You let me love you through it all." I stood and stepped away from the table. "Your hour's almost up. I'll be back in a minute." As I walked down the hall, I could still hear her crying. But I wasn't moved. Not anymore. There was no regret in my chest. Just finality. And in the bedroom, Isabelle waited. "You're the only man I've ever truly loved," Jenna sobbed, her words blurring into one long string of apologies and broken promises. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I never stopped loving you." I sat still, letting her voice become background noise. I'd heard enough. My thoughts drifted to the years I'd wasted, the blind trust I'd given her, and the life I once believed we were building together. Grief and rage swirled together like storm clouds, thick, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. At 2:05, I glanced at the clock and inhaled deeply. "We're done, Jenna," I said, voice firm and clear. "There's nothing left to say." "But Ethan, please," she started. Before she could finish, a voice came from behind us. "Baby," Isabelle purred from the bedroom doorway, "you said you'd be done by now. When are you coming back to bed?" Jenna whipped around like she'd been slapped. She froze. Isabelle leaned casually against the doorframe, a vision of composed sensuality. Her tousled black hair, the pale blue sheer robe barely concealing her figure, and the smudge of lipstick that only hinted at what had transpired. She was breathtaking. Elegant, unbothered, victorious. It was the first time all day that I allowed myself a real smile. Jenna sat rigid in her chair, drained of color, lips parted as if trying to form words, but coming up empty. The confidence she'd entered with had completely evaporated. She whispered, "No. No. No," over and over like a broken chant. I stood slowly. "Isabelle's right," I said coolly. "Your hour's up. And as you can see, I have other priorities." Jenna staggered to her feet, unsteady and trembling. "Ethan, I didn't know that you, her voice cracked. Her eyes bounced between Isabelle and me, wild and pleading. But there was no redemption left to offer her. She stood there for a moment, trembling, mouth opening, then closing. Finally, without another word, She turned and disappeared down the hall, vanishing into the wreckage she had created. I closed the door behind her, locking it with finality. Then I turned to Isabelle, the adrenaline still humming in my veins. "You're absolutely stunning," I said softly, still catching my breath. She smiled, a trace of emotion in her eyes. "Thank you, Ethan. I guess this," she gestured to the robe, "did the trick." "You didn't just shake her," I said, my voice thick. "You unraveled her." Her smile deepened, bittersweet. It was cathartic for me too. Closure, I guess, for what Cole did to me. That betrayal still stings. "I'm sorry you went through that," I said, meaning every word. "And I still can't stop staring at you." She laughed, stepping closer. Actually, she tugged lightly at the robe, teasing, "This thing's tricky to get off. Care to help?" Her arms wrapped around my neck. "Ethan, this feels right. For both of us." Her kiss was soft, sincere, and full of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. When we made love, it wasn't frantic or reactive. It was deliberate, intimate, connected. It was the first time in years I felt chosen, wanted not out of convenience, but for who I was. Afterward, we lay together, her head resting on my chest. Peace settled over me like a blanket. I hadn't known how desperately I needed it until now. Eventually, Isabelle stirred. "I should go," she whispered, slipping out of bed and dressing gracefully. I started to rise, but she placed a hand on my chest. "Rest," she said gently, disappearing into the bathroom. When she returned fully dressed, she leaned down and kissed me again. "I didn't plan this," she admitted. But after hearing what she said, I knew this was the right thing to do. I struggled for words. "Isabelle, thank you. What you did for me today, it's the kindest, most selfless thing anyone's ever done." She smiled warmly. "It wasn't just for you. It was for me too. You've given me more than you realize." One last kiss, and she was gone, leaving behind only the soft scent of perfume and a calm I hadn't known in years. I lay in bed for a while, playing the entire day back in my mind, the confrontation, Jenna's unraveling, Isabelle's tenderness. Eventually, exhaustion won. When I woke, the apartment was silent. I wandered aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. Later that evening, I called her. "Isabelle," I said, heart racing, "I just wanted to thank you again. You were incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." Her laugh was warm. "It wasn't strange for me, Ethan. It felt right." "It was special for me too," I said. "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" She paused, just for a moment. "I'd love to. And, if it's okay, I'd like to stay the night again." 3 weeks later, Marcus and Sophie came to visit. We spent the day wandering Chicago, coffee, museums, aimless conversation that felt easy and free. That night, we ended up at a hotel bar, laughing over drinks. I told them the story. The final scene with Jenna. Her expression. Isabelle's entrance. They laughed harder than I'd ever seen them. Then Isabelle arrived. Her green eyes lit up the room, commanding attention the moment she stepped in. I stood to greet her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Marcus, Sophie," I said proudly, "this is Isabelle Reed." They hit it off immediately. Marcus couldn't stop smiling. "Ethan," he said later, clapping my shoulder, "you've hit the jackpot." As we walked to dinner, Marcus pulled me aside. "So, is it serious?" I smiled. "We're figuring it out. But yeah, it feels serious." "She's amazing." "Good for you, man," he said. "Really? Looks like life's finally turning around." Walking behind Isabelle and Sophie, their laughter ringing through the city night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Real, uncomplicated joy. Years later, on a quiet Chicago morning, I sat by the window, sipping coffee and watching the world rush by beneath me. The echoes of the past, once so loud, so unbearable, had faded. What had once felt like endless grief now felt like a hard-earned lesson. Painful, but necessary. Isabelle's laughter drifted from the other room, grounding me in the present. She wasn't just a new chapter. She was proof. Proof that love, when it's honest and mutual, can heal even the deepest wounds. With her, there were no games. No lies. Just trust. Easy, unspoken, and real. I thought about the man I used to be, clinging to the illusion of love with Jenna, blind to the cracks beneath it. Losing her had shattered me. But in the aftermath, I rebuilt. What I thought was the end turned out to be a beginning. Looking out at the skyline, I felt gratitude. For the pain. For the clarity. For the second chance. Isabelle appeared in the doorway, her eyes sparkling. "Lost in thought again?" she teased. I smiled. "Just thinking how far I've come." She leaned against the frame, that familiar warmth in her eyes. "Well, I'm glad the road brought you here." "So am I," I said softly, setting down my coffee. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just moving on. I was finally, truly living.